The Toronto Blue Jays have made multiple signings, and some of these signings are sneaky good, as there is an extremely high chance, according to reports, that they're going to make an impact on the Jays this season. We're going to break that down in this episode, as well as discuss some more Blue Jays free agency updates ahead of what is going to be a crazy next few days for the Toronto Blue Jays, as a lot of these free agents and spring training inches closer and closer, and a lot of these free agents are coming to a decision. But before we get into that, folks, if you're part of the 71% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable. Thank you. It means the world from the bottom of my heart. I see all your comments. I really appreciate the support. If you want to continue to support, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Now, there's a lot to go over today. Now, obviously, yesterday there was a ton of news surrounding free agents and things like that, but something that got lost in the shuffle was last night, the Jays made multiple signings. Now, they signed a couple of major leaguers. They also signed major league guys to minor league contracts, but they also signed a couple of international free agents, which I want to dive into today, and we'll also dive into some other free agency updates. Let's start with this. Now, on the surface, you might think these moves are pretty minor, and they're not massive moves. They're not the huge moves that are going to change the landscape of the team necessarily. They've signed Christian Bethancourt and Richard Lovelady to minor league deals. First of all, Lovelady, an A-plus name. If anything, this was a great signing for Ross because the name is A-plus. He is a lefty reliever, but jokes aside, very interesting. Now, if you recognize the name Christian Bethancourt, it's because he used to play for the Tampa Bay Rays, and I remember gave the Jays some terrorizing season here. And a few different things to go over. So we'll start with this. Bethancourt, 33, will be a part of the competition to back up Alejandro Kirk. The Jays have Tyler Heineman, too, who already has a 40-man spot. Lovelady has pitched lefties well and gives them another option from that side. I'd expect a few more bullpen depth deals like this. So usually, they make a lot of minor league deals, and most of the time they don't really pan out too well, or they don't make a huge impact. But this is now direct competition versus Tyler Heineman, and quite frankly, I prefer Christian Bethancourt over Tyler Heineman. Now, Tyler Heineman is familiar with the Jays pitching staff. That's why every time he leaves or they trade him off, he always comes back. He has familiarity specifically with the pitching staff. And that obviously goes a very long way when you're looking at backup catchers, because you either want a backup catcher that can hit, which don't really exist because any backup catcher that can hit is a starting catcher, or you want one that is very solid defensively and things like that. Now, Christian Bethancourt is an extremely interesting player, and we're going to dive into someone else they added here in a minute, but he's a very interesting player. Now, coming off of a pretty good season, especially at the second half. So he was traded to the Cubs halfway through the season and put up a 0.8 WAR in 24 games with the Cubs. He put up an 814 OPS in his last 24 games last season. He, hits lefties well, he hits righties fairly well. At least he did last season towards the second half. So if you start to think about a backup catcher, it's going to be an interesting battle between Bethancourt and Tyler Heineman. Bethancourt has the better bat. He's had years of very decent, okay hitting, usually, 690 OPS-ish, which isn't great. It's better than Tyler Heineman, but he started off last season pretty rough and finished really well. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on Christian Bethancourt. Not going to be a groundbreaking signing, but again, we want to keep you up to date with all the latest news. These are two guys you're going to see in spring training. You're going to see them battle it out in camp. So got to cover that news as well. But speaking of some other signings, we'll also get into Lovelady here in a minute, because I want to dive into that on a bit of a different tangent here. But Toronto adds star Dominican Republic shortstop in 2025 international class. Now, this is interesting. So the Blue Jays' path to the postseason begins with amassing young talent. They may not have landed their white whale, of course, Roki Sasaki, but they believe they've added impact potential with shortstop Christopher Polanco as well. So they signed Christopher Polanco here, and this is an interesting one. Now, Polanco's deals were $2.29 $1 million, initially at a $6.26 million in pool money. They obviously got a couple more from Miles Straw. Their combined pool gives them more money to spend on international free agents. Now, Christopher Polanco is very intriguing, and he is the 22nd ranked prospect in the international class. Now, we've seen before the Toronto Blue Jays, they've hit on international free agents. Now, you think about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they made a trade to acquire space for him way back, I believe 2015, 2016, and then they signed him. Christopher Polanco and a bunch of some of the other guys, a bunch of the other, international free agents, a bunch of those guys could pan out for the Jays. They've done very well historically at finding guys who aren't necessarily top 5, top 10 consensus prospects in the international pool, and then turning them over well. You can see this here, though. It's important to keep long-term perspective in check, even when adding an advanced offensive talent. He's a very good offensive talent. Now, you think about Aurelvis Martinez. He was also an international signee. Emmanuel Bonilla. All of these guys. There is a lot of upside with these international free agents, and that's ultimately why you can't really judge them early. Like, he's the 22nd ranked international prospect. There's a world he soars up the rankings. There's a soar he plummets the rankings. And there's always going to be a bit of a microscope on these guys now because of that Miles Straw trade that didn't really make any sense. It still kind of doesn't make any sense. Ross Atkins came out and said it's not going to impact their ability to spend. So that's at least a good thing. But let me know down below if you're familiar with Christopher Polanco. He is an offensive-minded player. He's been playing, he played very well. And now the Jays get a guy clearly that they coveted and use some of that money towards it. But I want to go back here and touch on Richard Lovelady for a minute, because the Jays desperately need some left-handed pitching. And something lost in this is in the Anthony Santander signing, they got rid of Brandon Eisert, who was very solid last season in like 6 innings. He barely played, but in Buffalo, he was okay. And he's a guy who was, one of the lefties in the pen who was supposed to contribute to this team, at least to compete out of camp. Now you have Richard Lovelady, who is also an extremely interesting player. Nothing too special regarding Lovelady, but it's an A+ name, right? It's an A+ name. Last season, he was, pretty good, like really solid with the Tampa Bay Rays in 28 games, but with 3.77 ERA. So a very good ERA with the Tampa Bay Rays in, the second half of his year. This is a guy who has a very good chance to make it out of camp. You think about the Toronto Blue Jays lefties. You have Brandon Little. You have, of course, now Lovelady. So there's going to be some guys who are competing out of camp. Tim Mesa's gone. Genesis Cabrera is gone. Brandon Eisert is gone. So they're going to have to continue to add depth pieces like this. And Lovelady pitched lefties well. He's a lefty specialist. And if he can replace some of what, Tim Mesa was hoping to do last year before he, of course, fell off a cliff. And now you have Brendan Little, who's also going to battle for the spot. You would assume Brendan Little has the upper hand. He had a very good season, given the expectations last year for the Toronto Blue Jays. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on that, because it is a very, very interesting go. And again, regarding Christian Bethancourt, a 126 OPS plus, like I mentioned, in his last 24 games, he has an opportunity to take some of that spot and run with it there. And he had a very good, 2022 as well. So couple of players that, are flying under the radar, but I really think could be sneaky good signings, specifically Lovelady. I mean, there's a world where he comes out and he's a pitcher in the bullpen, and we see the Jays multiple times. They've continued to, scavenge some guys who end up being decent bullpen pieces. So let me know what your thoughts are on that. And as you start to look at now, regarding a free agency update, there's a lot of rumblings regarding Pete Alonso, Max Scherzer, all these guys. And we're going to keep you up to date with all that. Multiple videos coming, probably another video today as well here. But as you look at the lineup, and I wanted to bring this up, Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, Santander, Alonso, Kirk, Varsho, Clement, Jimenez. And that is assuming they stick with Clement at third. Let me know down below how many wins you think this team gets. I'm thinking between 88 and 92 wins with a team like this. If you get Pete Alonso and you get Max Scherzer, your lineup looks a heck of a lot better. A heck of a lot better. It looks very, very good. You have, obviously your starting rotation, which he's spoken about ad nauseum here. And out of the top remaining free agents, a lot of these guys are still available. And obviously, Kirby Yates is gone. Carlos Estevez is in talks with the Reds right now, which is a really weird fit, especially given that ballpark. But let me know down below. Again, we're going to keep you up to date. Things are starting to pick up on the Pete Alonso front. We're hearing a lot of rumblings from reporters that the Jays are all in. I had a video on that yesterday, how the Jays are really starting to pick things up. So as these things happen, let me know how many wins you think a team like this would get. And also let me know, who do you think they sign next? But that'll wrap it up. We're keeping you up to date with all the latest Jays news, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your continued support. It means the world to myself. Thank you guys for watching. Take it easy. Cheers.